Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ice-Burgh To Go, your daily or sometimes twice daily, apparently, dose of Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. Find us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins or anywhere you get your podcasts from. Just search Tip of the Iceberg, and you'll find us there. Episodes of Tip of the Iceberg are Tuesday, Thursday, and then this, a little shorter version, Ice-Burgh To Go on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Given the spiel for those who don't know, because the season is almost underway, we are just about 24 hours from puck drop against the Chicago Blackhawks. And folks, we have a roster. 22 players will begin the season with the Pittsburgh Penguins. There are plenty of names on this team that are fresh faces, but there's also a few surprises on this roster. Let's get down to it. The final roster, and the way we're going to organize this is potential lineup for tomorrow looks like this. First line, Jake Guentzel, Sidney Crosby, and Brian Rust. Guentzel is day-to-day. We'll talk about that in a little bit. He is a game-time decision coming back from an ankle surgery. Also had a full episode on it earlier today. If you didn't check that out, go check that out on both feeds. Second line, Riley Smith, Evgeny Malkin, Ricard Raquel. Third line, Jansen Harkins, Lars Eller, Drew O'Connor. Fourth line, Matt Nieto, Noel Acciari, and Jeff Carter. And that's it forward-wise. The Penguins going with 12 forwards to start the season. No 13th forward, no extra forward to put as a healthy scratch to start the season for the Penguins. Defensively, they have 8. Ryan Graves, Chris Letang is going to be your top pairing. Marcus Pettersson, Erik Karlsson is going to be your second pairing. Third pairing, likely to be Pierre-Olivier Joseph and Chad Ruhwedel. And then the Penguins have 2 extra defensemen on their roster. Ryan Shea, who has yet to make his NHL debut. Stellar season with the Texas Stars. Almost said Dallas Stars, but with the Texas Stars of the AHL last year. He makes the team out of camp. And somebody who we're going to talk a little bit about after we finish running through this roster, John Ludwig, new addition for the Penguins as of 4 hours ago, picked up on waivers by Kyle Dubas. And then, of course, I said there's 20 skaters, already went through all of them. 2 goaltenders, Tristan Jarry, the starter, Alex Nedeljkovic nets the backup position. That's the 22 names right there. That is your 2023-24 Pittsburgh Penguins, at least to start the season. Obviously, there's going to be plenty of moves that happen throughout the season, plenty of movement up and down, maybe more so than we have seen in several years for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But before we depart, I do want to make a couple notes on this roster. First and foremost, Dubas, he wasn't done. He wasn't satisfied after he spoke to the media today around 10:30 in the morning. He went out and he claimed John Ludwig, defenseman from the Florida Panthers. The left-hander has 2 years left on his contract that is worth $775,000 at the NHL level. He's young, only 23 years old, and he's yet to make his NHL debut. So when you look at his game, and I have not watched a lot of his game, I default to others who have done much more film study, like a Jesse Marshall of The Athletic. Jesse Marshall put out on Twitter, he said, this guy plays with a lot of edge. He plays chippy. He plays physical. He gets into the dirty areas and does some things that a lot of these Pittsburgh Penguins defensemen don't, right? He's a little bit of nasty, and the Penguins need that. The Penguins always need a little bit more of that, and you see them adding that late in the preseason with Jansen Harkins on the forward side and now with John Ludwig on the defensive side. So interesting to see the Penguins go out on the day of roster finalization and bring in another name, bring in another guy, and bring in an 8th defenseman. We knew throughout camp that there was going to be 22 players. The expectation was 1 extra forward, 1 extra defenseman. They go with 2 extra defensemen and say, forward-wise, we'll figure that out, but we have 12 for tomorrow. And again, we'll get to that in a second. But to close out the Ludwig discussion really quickly, it falls in line with a few other players Dubas has brought in. Ryan Shea and Jansen Harkins. These are younger guys who have succeeded at the AHL level. They've succeeded at the 1B level of hockey, at least North American hockey, not 1B. It's the B. It's the number 2. But they've succeeded a lot at the AHL. They're giving them a shot to be part of the Penguins' depth. They're giving them a shot to come to Pittsburgh and try to make that translation from AHL to NHL. Harkins, you saw it in the 2 preseason games that he played. He brings that little bit of edge. Ludwig brings that little bit of edge. We're going to see that when he gets into a Penguins uniform. Ryan Shea, not as much, but he does bring a very steady defensive game. All 3 of these guys, solid numbers at the AHL level last season. Kyle Dubas takes a shot on him, takes a chance on him, and all 3 of them make the Penguins roster out of camp. The other thing that was obviously the highlight when this came out just about 10 minutes ago is the Penguins going with 12 forwards. You got bubble forwards, Vinny Hinostroza, Radim Zohorna, Colin White, Alex Nylander, Andreas Johnsson, that all passed through waivers. So here's the thing. To quell any concerns that people have, they don't have an extra forward, and Jake Gensel's coming off of an injury, what are they going to do? The fact that all of these guys have passed through waivers means that they can be called up if needed without threat of going back on waivers. The only time that they become, again, waiver eligible is if they're on the NHL roster for a cumulative 30 days or if they play in 10 games. So what Kyle Dubas has essentially done is taken all of his bubble forwards and gotten rid of their waiver eligibility, at least to start the season. I already mentioned the names, but it's Hinostroza, it's Zohorna, it's White, it's Nylander, it's Johnsson. They all pass through waivers. So again, they can be called up and sent down as long as they don't stay at the NHL level for a cumulative 30 days or play in 10 games. They don't have to worry about using waivers to get them back down there. This does call into question Jake Gensel's status for tomorrow, though. That's what gets a little interesting. Because either he's playing, and he is day-to-day. Obviously, it's a lower body injury. He's coming back from that ankle surgery. He's day-to-day, and he's a game-time decision. All intents and purposes, it looks like he's going to be ready to play. But again, you never know how something is going to respond. You never know how an injury is going to respond. He might wake up tomorrow, and it might not feel right at morning skate. So either he's playing, or the Penguins are just going to have to go with 11 forwards in their opening game. Not a strategy that I prefer to watch, preferably, especially with a team that the bottom 6 is a huge question mark entering the season, and I understand that the Chicago Blackhawks are not supposed to be the 2012-13 Chicago Blackhawks. In fact, they're probably expected to be towards the bottom half of the league, but still, you want to get off on the right foot. I don't know. I'd rather not see them play with 11 forwards. This might be a moot point. Jake Gensel might be good to go, and they're running with 12, and it doesn't matter. But, it was interesting when that roster came out that both Ludwig and Shea made the roster. I mean, I guess they would have to, right? They would have to. Because waivers were already done. You couldn't send down Shea. You couldn't send down Ludwig. So I guess at the end of the day, it makes sense that they had to run with these 8 defensemen and 12 forwards. And again, waivers run throughout the season. So by tomorrow at 2 o'clock, they could put one of those two, one of Ryan Shea or John Ludwig on waivers, and then call up a forward, one of the guys I mentioned already, on Wednesday. But at least for now, the Penguins are running with 12 and 8. It's interesting. It's not the end of the world. It's something that I have seen a couple people overreact to, and I get it. You look at that and you say, first of all, man, who are these guys? Like, a lot of people that are seeing this and weren't paying attention to the waiver wire are probably wondering, who is John Ludwig and how did he make this roster? Well, Kyle Dubas has a plan, and it is a plan that as of right now has brought in a lot of fresh faces. I mean, you look at this roster out of camp, again, could be changed as early as Wednesday. But you look at this roster out of camp, 3 names on it that I think coming into training camp, nobody would have bet on to make the opening night roster. Jansen Harkins wasn't even with the organization. Neither was John Ludwig. And I don't think anybody gave Ryan Shea an opportunity to make this roster out of camp. It just goes to show that This was an open competition during training camp. It goes to show that, listen, look at all of these guys. Vinny, Hinostroza, Radim Zahorna, Colin White, I keep saying them, Alex Nylander, Andreas Janssen. I think I'm missing one. I don't know. Sam Poulin was in that, Valtteri Pusin, but their waivers exempt, so they weren't really on the bubble because they can freely be sent up and down. But all of these guys had a shot. They had a shot. Drew O'Connor ran away with one of the positions very quickly. Jansen Harkins comes in at the last minute, and he earns himself a spot with 2 pretty good performances on Wednesday and Friday of last week. And a guy like Ryan Shea. Mark Pesic's injury kind of blurs the lines there a little bit because I feel like he would have probably been where Chad Ruhwedel is. But Ryan Shea outperforms Ty Smith, outperforms Mark Friedman. I don't think anybody would have had that on their bingo card 2.5 weeks ago. But congratulations to the 22 guys that made the roster. Like I said, a lot of names here that you expected, pretty much the entire forward lineup except for Jansen Harkins and maybe Drew O'Connor 2.5 weeks ago, but really from the first day of camp, he kind of solidified that role. And then defensively, Shea, Ludwig, Ruhwedel, there were questions, but he comes out on top. He comes out in the lineup, and the rest of it is all as expected. So, interesting times for the Pittsburgh Penguins. How will Kyle Dubas tinker with this roster as the season gets underway? Will they start to utilize waivers for one of these 8 defensemen? Who's going to get the first call-up when it comes to forwards? These are all questions that we'll have to continue to ask, continue to get answers to as the season goes on, but it is a marathon and not a sprint. The 22 guys that are on this roster now are not going to be the 22 guys that the Penguins finish the season with. It's going to be a fun year. Thankfully, tomorrow's a game day. But that's going to do it for this episode of Ice-Burgh To Go. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins or anywhere you get your podcasts. Tomorrow, it's going to be a great day for hockey. We'll see you guys next time.